The desert wind kicked up fine dust as I rode into Sundown Bluff, a town too small to bother anyone and too dry to matter much. My horse, Boone, didn't seem to mind the heat, but I'd had just about enough of it. All I wanted was a drink, a bag of coffee, and silence. Maybe 2 nights in a bed that didn't creak like old bones. I tied Boone outside the trading post and stepped onto the porch. That's when I saw them. 2 children sitting side by side on the top step. A girl with tangled dark hair clutched a worn canvas sack, and a boy, no older than 6, leaned in her shoulder, thumb in his mouth and eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept. They looked up when my boots hit the wood. "You the cowboy who finds lost things?" the girl asked. Her voice was steady, like she'd practiced the question 100 times. I didn't answer right away. I've been called a bounty hunter, a tracker, sometimes worse, but never that. I tipped my hat. "Depend what's lost." "Our mama," the boy mumbled. "She's real lost." The girl gave him a gentle nudge, then stood up and stepped forward, chin lifted like someone twice her size. "She's been gone 6 days. Our uncle left us. No one else will help. You look like someone who might." Her dress was sun-bleached, hemp-frayed. She had scratches on her knees and dust on her cheeks, but she stood proud, like she wasn't begging, just stating facts. Something about her hit me in the chest, sharp and sudden. I saw a flash of another girl, long ago, my sister Clara, begging me not to leave that night I did. I cleared my throat. "What's your name?" "Willa. This is Joey." He waved with 2 fingers and kept chewing his thumb. "You 2 been out here on your own?" "Our uncle said he was going to the saloon to ask about Mama. That was 2 days ago. He never came back." I rubbed the back of my neck. I didn't come to Sundown to play nursemaid or dig into other folks' messes. But something in Willa's stare said she wouldn't stop asking. And something in Joey's silence said he didn't have much left. "You got anything that belonged to her?" Willa reached into the canvas sack. She pulled out 2 things, a torn yellow ribbon stained with something brown, and a brass locket with scratched-up initials, CR. "Cassidy Ray," she said. "That's our mama." I took the ribbon between my fingers. The cloth was still damp. Blood, dried but recent. Not the kind of clue a child should carry. "You tell the sheriff?" He said she probably ran off. Willa's voice hardened. "But Mama wouldn't leave us. She promised." Promises. I knew what those were worth. Still, something told me this woman hadn't broken hers. Not by choice. I squatted down to Joey's level. "She wore anything else? Something you remember?" "She always wore yellow. Her dress was like sunshine," he whispered. "And she smells like cinnamon." The boy's lip trembled, but he held it together. I stood slowly, slipping the locket into my coat pocket. "All right," I said, not sure why the words were coming out. "I'll see what I can find." Willa blinked, like she wasn't expecting me to say yes. "You will?" she asked. I nodded once. "But I ride alone." Willa looked disappointed, but didn't argue. She just stepped back and sat beside her brother, pulling him close again. "Her name's Cassidy Ray. She was wearing yellow. Please find her." I turned and stepped off the porch, feeling the weight of the locket in my pocket and their eyes on my back. Boone nickered as I untied his reins, like he knew this was going to be a longer stay than planned. The sky had started to shift, clouds rolling in low and slow like they were stalking the sun. I rode out past the edge of town and followed the trail behind the mill, where the ground turned dry and cracked. If someone had taken Cassidy by force, they wouldn't have gone into town. They'd have gone where law turned to whispers. I dismounted near the dry creek, but an hour later. There were scuff marks in the sand, and something glinted beneath a rock. I knelt and pulled out a single boot, lady size, yellow-stained, and torn at the heel. Not fresh, but not old either. Next to it, a horseshoe print pointed east toward the canyon's edge. I looked at Boone, then back toward the hills. Sun was dipping low, and if I was smart, I'd turn back and wait till morning. But then I thought of Willa's small voice, calm but shaking. She promised. And Joey's soft whisper, "She smells like cinnamon." I mounted up. Whatever trail Cassidy Ray left behind, I was going to follow it. 2 clues and a hunch in my gut. I just hoped I wasn't already too late. The sun was hanging low behind my back as Boone and I rode east, the trail winding through dry gulches and brittle scrub. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No birds, no coyotes, not even the buzz of flies. Just the creak of saddle leather and the soft crunch of hooves on parched earth. It was the kind of silence that told you something had gone wrong, and folks had learned not to ask questions about it. I didn't know much about Cassidy Ray besides a ribbon, a locket, and the faces of two children who hadn't cried once, but were too quiet in a way that clung to a man after he rode off. Still, I'd seen enough women like her. Women who held on through worse than they'd ever speak aloud. And I'd seen the men who broke them. Near a bend in the wash, I spotted a splash of faded yellow on a rock, a strip of cloth fluttering in the wind like it was waving me down. I dismounted, took it in hand. It was the same fabric as the ribbon Willa had given me. Someone wanted this trail followed, or they weren't careful hiding their tracks. Farther up the ridge, I found more signs. A boot heel in the dust, wagon splinters, a trail of broken mesquite branches like someone had been dragged or fought to stay upright. Boone pawed nervously at the ground. He didn't like the smell in the air, smoke and iron, faint but present. I hadn't come this far to turn back. The trail led me to a small trading shack nestled between the rocks. Half-rotted, leaning, but smoke curled from a chimney and the sound of a hammer clinked behind the building. I walked Boone around and spotted a bearded man hammering a broken wheel, his shirt soaked through with sweat and oil. "You Hank Trudel?" I asked. He squinted up at me, eyes sharp despite the grime. "Depends who's asking. Name's Coulter Maddox. I'm tracking someone. Woman in yellow, mid-30s. Might have passed through here." His hammer slowed, then stopped. Maybe I saw her. Maybe I didn't. I reached into my coat and held up the locket. "Her name's Cassidy Ray. She's got 2 kids waiting for her in Sundown Bluff." That name changed something in his face. Not sympathy, fear. "She came through here 4 nights ago," he muttered. "Had a shiner on her eye and blood on her sleeve. She weren't alone. 3 fellas rode with her, all with that gray-trimmed coat, like old Confederates, but meaner. Said they were escorting their cousin home. Didn't smell right to me." "Which way?" "Red Ridge," he said, nodding east. "But I be careful, mister. Folks disappear out that way. Some by choice, most not." I gave him a short nod and mounted up. He grabbed my stirrup before I could ride off. "If she's there, you'll find more than her." "What do you mean?" "Word is that camp don't just keep folks. They trade him." I didn't say anything. Just turned Boone toward the ridge and rode faster than I should have, letting the wind cut through the weight in my chest. Before night fell, I came across a woman traveling alone. Her wagon was small, packed with jars and herbs hanging from every side. She wore a sun hat pulled low and a satchel of dried plants slung across her shoulder. "You ride into Red Ridge?" she asked, voice low but not unfriendly. "Why?" "'Cause if you are, you best know that not everyone who goes and comes out. You sound like someone who's been there. I've treated women who escaped. One with a busted collarbone. One who couldn't speak for months. Some never make it back at all." She studied me, then reached into her satchel and handed me a pouch. "Crushed bitterroot. For bleeding. If she's hurt, this might help." I took it and nodded. "You got a name?" "Mara Teague." "You?" "Coulter Maddox." She didn't flinch. "Heard of you. You're the one who found Sheriff Van's boy in the Winter Pass." "That was a long time ago." "Well, good luck, Mr. Maddox. If she's there, you better hurry. They don't keep folks long." I rode hard for another hour, the sky turning indigo, shadows long as scars. Boone's breath came heavy, but he pushed on, like he knew this mattered. At the edge of a narrow pass, I made camp under a bluff. As I set my fire low, just enough to heat beans and coffee, I spotted something under a cedar bush. I knelt and pulled it out. A sheet of torn paper, smudged with dirt and crayon. A stick figure drawing of a woman with long yellow dress, 2 small children holding her hands. At the bottom, written in a shaky scrawl, "Joey." In here broke something in me. I sat by the fire with that paper in my lap, staring at the sky, wondering if Cassidy Ray was still alive, or if I was just riding a trail of ghosts and promises already broken. Then the wind shifted, and I heard it. A scream, high, distant, and carried on the canyon wind. Boone jerked up his head, ears pointed. I stood, heart pounding. Another scream, fainter this time. Then silence. I snuffed the fire with my boot and packed up fast. I'd found enough signs to know she was close, and not just in memory. Cassidy Ray was out there, and if I moved fast enough, I might still bring her home. We rode through the pale hush of morning, the sky blushing with the first light of day. Boone's hooves pounded a steady rhythm across the hard-packed trail, and Cassidy leaned against me, silent but conscious. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling from pain and cold, but she didn't utter a word of complaint. Sundown Bluff rose ahead like a promise. The familiar sight of the weather-beaten church steeple, the windmill groaning in the breeze, the outline of the trading post, it all came into view like we were riding back into something sacred. As we neared the edge of town, two small figures stood on the porch where I'd first found them. Willa, still holding that battered sack, and Joey with his little fists clenched at his sides. They stared, squinting into the sun, unmoving. Then Willa dropped the sack, let out a broken cry, and ran. Cassidy stirred in the saddle. "My babies!" I pulled Boone to a halt as Willa reached us. She didn't speak, just grabbed her mama's hand like she might vanish if she let go. Joey followed, tears rolling down his cheeks, his voice small and cracked. "You found her?" Cassidy slid from the saddle, knees buckling, but I caught her before she fell. She wrapped both arms around her children, burying her face in their hair, holding them like she could stitch time back together with nothing but touch. I stepped back, giving them space. The street was still empty, no gawkers, no questions, just wind and the sound of home being remembered. Sheriff Bo Harlan came striding across the street, boots thudding. His badge caught the light as he approached, one hand resting on his belt. "Maddox," he said, nodding once. "She was being held at Red Ridge." I told him. 3 men. They claimed they were family, but they weren't. One's named Tad Crowley. The others didn't give names. "She all right?" "She will be. Got enough bruises and a busted arm, but she's walking." He looked at Cassidy, who still knelt holding her children. "You gonna press charges, ma'am?" Cassidy turned, eyes swollen but clear. "I'll testify. Just keep them away from my kids." "You have my word," Harlan said. "We'll ride out by noon and collect whoever's left." He looked back at me. "Glad it was you that found her." I gave him a small nod and watched him walk off. The man didn't say much, but he got things done. That's all Cassidy needed now. Willa stood and approached me, her face streaked with dust and tears. "You came back," she said. I said I would. Joey followed, holding something in his hand. He looked up and offered it. The locket. I must have dropped it during the ride. "She always wore this," he said. "She told us it meant we'd always find each other." I knelt, took the locket gently. Then I reckon it worked. Cassidy came up behind them, one arm cradled in a sling Mara Teague must have wrapped back at her wagon. Her eyes met mine, full of exhaustion, full of something deeper too, something not easily spoken between strangers. "You saved me," she said. "I just followed the trail," I replied. She shook her head, slow. "No, you listened." No one else even looked. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just tipped my hat. "You need anything, I'll be around another day or two." She hesitated. "You never told me why you came looking." "2 kids asked me to," I said simply. "And I made a promise once I didn't keep. Figure I owed something to someone." Cassidy nodded like she understood more than I said. Later that evening, after I'd stabled Boone and washed the trail dust from my face, I sat outside the inn, watching the stars begin to wink into place. The door creaked behind me. Willa stepped out, barefoot, carrying 2 tin cups. She handed me one. "Cider," she said. "Mama's idea. Tell her thank you. She said you were leaving in the morning." I nodded. "That's right. You always ride alone?" I sipped the cider, then looked at her. Sometimes a man's got more luck in silence. She squinted at me, but not more company. That made me chuckle. She turned serious again. "How'd you find Mama with just 2 clues?" I looked down at the cup, at the reflection of moonlight swimming on its surface. "I followed what mattered," I said, "and I listened to what didn't make noise. That's where truth hides." She nodded like she'd filed that away, then turned and went back inside. I sat there a while longer, listening to the creak of the town settling into sleep. The door shut gently behind her. Somewhere inside, Cassidy Ray would be tucking her children in a bed, whispering the kind of promises that wouldn't break this time. And me, I ride out come sunrise like I always did. But something in me had shifted, something I hadn't felt in years. Sometimes, you don't need a map to find what's lost. Sometimes, you just need two clues and a reason that matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to find your way home. The town looked different in the morning, warmer, somehow. The sun hadn't yet cleared the hills, but its light was already spilling soft gold over the rooftops, painting everything quiet and calm. I stood out front of the stable, tightening Boone's saddle straps, trying not to think too much about what I was leaving behind. Behind me, boots scuffed on the boardwalk. I turned to see Cassidy Ray stepping out of the inn. She moved slower now, careful with her arm in a sling, but there was something steadier in her posture, like strength had returned to her spine overnight. She walked up, a shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. I gave her a small nod. Sun's rising, and there's always more road. Her eyes lingered on Boone, then on the locket I'd looped around my saddle horn. I used to think if I ever got free, I'd run and never stop, far away from all of it. But this town's got something I didn't expect. Two somethings, I said with a faint smile. She laughed softly. "They won't stop talking about you. Joey thinks you're some kind of hero. Willa said you're the kind of man who keeps promises without being asked." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just looked out across the street. Cassidy followed my gaze. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't owe me thanks," I said. "You stayed alive. You kept going. That's more than most. I didn't do it alone. You left signs. You gave them hope. And you taught those kids to trust a stranger when it counted. That's something." She stepped closer. "What about you, Coulter? What are you going back to?" I hesitated. That was always the question, wasn't it? Dust. Silence. Maybe another trail, another fire to put out. I've never stayed in one place long enough to know what it's like not chasing something. Cassidy tilted her head. "You ever get tired of running?" "Every day," I admitted. "But stopping's the hard part." We stood quiet for a while, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just full. Then the front door creaked open, and Willa and Joey came tumbling out. Willa had her hair braided for the first time. Joey carried a folded-up piece of paper in both hands like it was made of glass. They ran up, breathless. "Wait," Willa called. "We got something for you." Joey offered the paper, cheeks red. "It's from both of us." I opened it. Another drawing. Me on a horse. Cassidy standing with her arms around the kids. All four of us smiling beneath a sun that filled the whole sky. Cassidy watched me with soft eyes. "They said you needed something to carry with you. To remember." I folded the paper and slipped it into my coat pocket like it was something holy. "You two be good," I said, crouching to their level. "Take care of your mama." Willa nodded seriously. "We will. And if you ever need help again," I added, "you don't wait on nobody. You leave signs. You fight like she did." Joey stepped forward and hugged me. It caught me off guard. I let it happen anyway. Cassidy stood with one hand over her heart, like she was holding something in place. As I mounted Boone and turned toward the road, she called out, "Why did you help us, really?" I looked down at her, the wind catching the ends of her shawl. "Because a long time ago, my sister needed someone to follow her trail, and no one did." I met her eyes. I didn't want to make that mistake twice. Cassidy took a breath like she was about to cry, but didn't. Instead, she smiled. "You didn't." I tipped my hat to her and gave Boone the signal. As we rode out past the edge of Sundown Bluff, I glanced back once. The three of them stood framed in the morning light, like something out of a memory that hadn't happened yet. I didn't know where the next trail would lead or what waited at the end of it. But for the first time in years, I wasn't riding just to outrun something. I was riding forward, with two clues in my pocket, and the proof that sometimes when you take a chance on people, they take a chance on you right back. And that, I figured, was worth remembering.